You are listening to Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan.
Chapter 34. Bax pulled to a stop in front of the massive house. Sergeant Reed pulled in next to her. She slid out of her Jeep and looked at the house. It was a smaller version of the corporate office building. Exposed steel beams and posts, local rock that helped it blend into the hillside, and massive panes of glass on all sides. There were 2 stone fireplaces at either end of what looked like a great room, and with all the lights on, the house glowed in the darkness. Bax checked her watch. It was late, but there was never a good time to deliver this kind of news. Sergeant Reed stepped next to her. "You ready?" he asked. Bax nodded and walked up the sidewalk and the stone steps to the front door. She paused and listened. The sound of an argument came through the 2 massive front doors. 2 women, she thought to herself. She pushed the doorbell and heard footsteps heading towards the door. The door swung open. Gabriella stood in front of her, wearing jeans and a large University of Colorado sweatshirt. She was barefoot and her red hair hung loose. She held a large half-full wineglass. "What?" she asked, then realizing who it was, she changed her tone. "Agent Baxter, Sergeant Reed," she said. "Evening, ma'am," said Bax. "May we come in?" Gabriella gained her composure. "It's quite late, Agent Baxter. Can't this wait till morning?" "No, ma'am. I'm afraid it can't." "Well, if you must, please come in." She stepped aside, and Bax and Reed stepped into the largest entry foyer Bax had ever seen. The floors were polished granite, and the stairs to the second level were black steel and varnished wood. She looked through the door to a massive sitting area with several wall-mounted televisions, huge leather couches, and 2 massive stone fireplaces. A massive black metal and glass chandelier filled the center of the room. The overall effect was stunning. Gabriella stepped through the door into the sitting area, and Bax and Reed followed. Standing near one of the fireplaces were 2 people. A man in his 40s, wearing jeans and a t-shirt, and a woman who was a younger version of Gabriella but without the years of stress on her face. Gabriella introduced them to her sister Tina, and her husband, Peter Welker. Both nodded, never extending a hand. Tina's cheeks were red, and it was obvious that she was one of the people involved in the argument. Gabriella sunk onto one of the couches and looked at Bax. "Folks, there's no easy way to say this. Your brother Ramon's body was found at the scene of a tunnel cave-in earlier today. We just received confirmation of his identity from the coroner. You have our deepest condolences." Tina's hand went to her mouth, her eyes filled with tears, and she wobbled. Reed, who was closest, stepped over and eased her onto the couch. Peter Welker never moved and looked at Gabriella. Bax wondered about his reaction. Gabriella, always in control, looked at Bax. "That's not possible. There must be some mistake." "Why do you say that, ma'am?" asked Bax. "I would have heard about a cave-in at one of our mines." "I've heard nothing." "Where did this happen?" "An old mine at the top of God Almighty Road," said Reed. "Why the hell would he be up there? That mine was abandoned 20 years ago, at least. He was supposed to be looking at security for a new mine we are preparing to open. He was with Dutch. Shit. I need to call Dutch." She pulled her phone from her back pocket. "Who is Dutch, ma'am?" asked Bax. "Dutch Heinrich. He's our director of security." She pushed a few buttons, but Bax stopped her. "Ma'am, would Dutch also be known as William Heinrich?" Gabriella froze. "Yes." "Why?" "Your brother's body was found near another body, which we've identified as William Heinrich." Tina shook. "Oh my God." "Ms. Velasquez," said Bax. "We need to ask you some questions, if that's all right. I know you are in shock, but it will help us catch the person who did this." "Did this," said Peter Welker. "You said they were killed in a tunnel collapse. What do you mean, who did this?" "I never said they were killed in a mine collapse, sir. Ramon Velasquez was stabbed to death, and Mr. Heinrich died from multiple gunshot wounds. It appears from the crime scene that Mr. Velasquez was stabbed by Mr. Heinrich, who was then shot several times by someone else. We recovered the knife and 2 pistols at the scene. We believe the collapse was triggered to conceal the murders. That's ridiculous, said Gabriella. My brother and Dutch were as close as brothers. They were raised together, and who would have triggered the collapse? That's what we are investigating to find out. We suspect there was a third party at the scene. When did you last see your brother? Gabriella stood and paced. This morning at breakfast. Right afterward, he went to meet Dutch. This makes no sense, Agent Baxter. Dutch was a part of the family. There must be another explanation. Dutch was a psycho, said Tina. Gabriella stared at her sister, who had recovered from the initial shock. Why do you say that? Asked Bax. Bax noticed Gabby shake her head, but Tina continued. He was always sneaking around when we were younger, and when he got back from the army, he was even nuttier. He was always playing with the knife he carried, and once when I was home from college, I watched him beat up one of the union reps. The guy almost died. Ramon paid the guy off, and it was never reported to the authorities. That's how it worked. Ramon would need something done, and that crazy fuck Dutch would make sure it got done. Tina, that's enough, said Gabriella. Please excuse her, Agent Baxter. This has been a shock to all of us. Now, if you'll excuse us. Just a couple more questions, ma'am. Where were each of you today? Peter Welker stepped forward. You can't believe we had anything to do with this? Mr. Welker, we need to know to remove you from our suspect list. So, if you please. Welker, looking annoyed, said, I met with Gabriella at the office this afternoon, and after I was here doing work. We were supposed to head back to our home in Denver, but Tina wanted to speak with her brother, so we stayed. Tina looked up and stared at Peter, the news of the meeting with Gabriella catching her off guard. She took a deep breath. I was here with the boys all day. We rode horses this morning, and then we watched 2 movies this afternoon. The first 2 of The Lord of the Rings. I was in my office all day, except for a meeting with the mine engineering team from 1 to 4. You can stop by the office and check my email and calls. We'll be sure to do that, said Bax. So you have no idea why your brother and Mr. Heinrich were at the old mine? They each shook their head. Ma'am, said Bax. Did Mr. Heinrich have any family we can contact, and did he drive one of your Escalades? Dutch had no living family, and yes, he drove one of our Escalades. Why? Asked Gabriella. We found 2 burned-out vehicles at the crime scene. It was the smoke from the car fires that attracted the attention of someone who reported it. Bax looked at Reed, then back at the group. Thank you all for your time, and again, you have our deepest sympathies. Gabriella led the way back to the front door and opened it, and they walked through and headed for their vehicles. The door closed behind them. What did you think, Isaac? He stopped next to her Jeep as she opened the door. I think Tina was surprised, as was her husband, who seemed oblivious. Gabriella was hiding something. I agree. I also got the impression that Tina was not aware of the meeting between her brother and Gabriella, said Bax. She looked at her watch. I need to head back to Glenwood and get a few hours of sleep. Thanks for hanging around with me all day. I hope your wife won't be mad. Reed laughed. My wife's been married to a cop for a long time, Bax. She's never complained once in all that time. She's my rock. They shook hands, slid into their vehicles, and drove away from the mansion.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of Crime Unraveled, a Buck Taylor novel by Chuck Morgan. You can find the entire crime series as well as other novels by Chuck Morgan at chuckmorganbooks.com or on Amazon.